the program. And how's the last couple of weeks been? Because events continuing to move on in the Middle East, but not much coverage in the Western media, as far as I can see.
No, apart from their attempts, of course, to rewrite history entirely as regards the last 14 years of interference by MI6 and CIA in Syria. I do recommend that everybody listens to the podcast 4 that you and I did, Mike, because this will be very relevant in relation to the report I'm going to put forward now, which is basically a few updates on the circumstances surrounding the departure of President Assad, and the final fall of Damascus, which of course led to my leaving Syria on the Sunday, the 9th of December. It does seem a long time ago now. So this was an interview about an hour and a half with Kamal Sakar, who was the head of media for the palace, for the president himself. This was given about 2 days ago, during which he gave a number of details on the final days and weeks before the fall of Syria. So let's have a look. It was basically summarized by, I think this is a UAE-based journalist. So he's doing a summary. He's not actually doing a transcript. Bear that in mind. So he says basically fascinating details about Assad's last day in this interview with Assad's media czar, his media chief and close aide, Kamal Sakar, as I mentioned. So let's have a look. What I've basically done, I've double-checked it with a number of people who were also closely involved with the presidential team. Some of the timeline leading up to President Assad's departure is apparently not 100% accurate. So I've teased out the information which basically ties in with the conversation that we had, Mike, in the 4th podcast on Syria. So he talks about the fact that the fall of Aleppo was very shocking for Assad. So clearly Assad was not aware that all of this was going to be happening in the very near future. Before Aleppo, the development seemed serious but not alarming. He had zero expectation such a thing would happen. The army was not mentally or logistically ready to fight, and Russia was at the peak of its distraction in Ukraine. In the months before the Aleppo operation, the visibility and presence of Shia militia in Syria had been reduced as Hezbollah had received heavy blows in Lebanon, and Syria was being closely surveilled by Israel. He then goes on to say, Assad had a very specific request from Putin to personally ensure the safety. What he's saying is Assad specifically asked Putin to ensure the safety for Iranian military support in Syria, including air supplies into Haimaim. I don't quite understand the bit about Russia was not in a position to get involved in Iran too. The Iranians told Assad they did not receive the signals. So despite the assurances apparently given by Russia, Iran didn't receive the signals or assurances from Russia that it was safe for them to fly to Haimaim, which was the Russian base on the coast in Syria, through Iraqi airspace. Assad then checked with Moscow, but he got no response. The Iranians told the Syrians a plane moved nonetheless from Tehran to Syria through Iraq, but were warned by the United States that the plane would be shot down if it continued on its way. News reports at the time indicated that the US at that point had struck Shia militias in Syria near the border with Iraq, and so the plane turned around and went back to Tehran. Then, basically, he says Assad realized that he was in trouble when Putin would not pick up his calls from Tuesday to Thursday, 3 days before his departure from Syria. At one point, Assad was told Putin was traveling in Belarus and wouldn't be able to take the call. The one thing that the media director does say in the interview is that this is not normal. Putin would be able to take the call at any time, wherever he was. So this excuse seemed to be nothing more than an excuse not to pick up the phone to Assad at this point. On Thursday, Assad prepared a 400-word speech, which is what I put out literally a day after I left Damascus, that a speech was prepared, which would be delivered on television. The speech had several sections. The first, warning about dividing Syria. The second, attacking Turkey and its dishonesty. The third, urging Arab support for Syrian unity. And finally, urging the Syrians to fight. It's also worth noting that at Doha, which was the end of November, Turkey, Iran, and Russia had come up with a deal where Assad would stay for 6 months to basically form a transitional government, which would include a coalition of current government members and members representing the various minorities inside Syria. It became clear at some point that probably Turkey reneged on this when HTS and other factions from the south entered Damascus. I think at that point it became very clear that this 6-month deal was not going to be fulfilled. As David Miller said on X, as a result of reading this summary of the interview, in sum, Bashar and Syria were sold out by Putin, who cut a side deal with Turkey to ensure Russia's interests would be protected in a future ISIS-run, colonized and fractured Syria. We have to remember that when we see the videos of HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, very often those militants are wearing ISIS patches. That's why David's referring to them. Iranian policymakers were left blindsided and without either the time or the air support to help protect Syria's sovereignty against the ISIS hordes and their Turkish backers. The Zionist strategy of constant airstrikes on Syria over several years with Russian complicity and without a response from the resistance created the opportunities the Zionists needed. The US, Turkey, and the GCC all worked with this Zionist strategy to ensure an ISIS takeover. GCC, I would actually identify Qatar out of that as the primary player. Interesting that as this interview was published, this also came out, causes of the collapse of the Syrian government, disclosure by General Behruz Esparti, one of the senior commanders of the Revolutionary Guards in Syria. Russia was one of the main factors in the collapse of Syria and Assad. Russia turned off its radar so Israel could attack the intelligence headquarters in Aleppo. Russia both deceived Assad and betrayed Iran. Strong words. All Russian actions after October the 7th were to serve Israeli interests. Also very strong words. And I just want to play, this was an interview given by Jolani, the head of the transitional HTS government in Damascus.
المنطقة كانت ستتعرض إلى حرب إقليمية واسعة جدا. كان هناك حديث عن تدخل إسرائيلي إلى المنطقة وإلى سوريا، وكان يقال أنها ستكون الحرب الأكبر ما بعد غزة ولبنان، وهذا كان الواقع، لأن في حال كان دخلت القوات الإسرائيلية إلى سوريا فبالضرورة أن الإيرانيين سيزجون بالعراق لمواجهة هذا التقدم، وبالتالي تركيا تشعر بقلق كبير من التقدم الإسرائيلي. ستكون لديها مواقف في اعتقادي ستكون ضد الإسرائيليين وموافقة للإيرانيين، وهذا الأمر بالتأكيد سيستغل روسيا للفت الأنظار عن الحرب الأوكرانية، وبالتالي سيحصل هناك ردات فعل أمريكية، ولا يخلو الأمر من استهدافات في داخل طهران والخروج من بعض القواعد الخليجية، مما سيؤدي إلى أن ترد طهران على بعض القواعد الخليجية وسيتسبب في أزمة كانت كبيرة جدا. الحرب الخاطفة هذه أمنت كل المنطقة من هذه المخاطر المحتملة، وأمنت أمن الخليج بشكل أساسي إلى 50 سنة إلى الأمام، وكذلك الأمن القومي التركي أيضا تأمن، والأمن القومي لسوريا بالدرجة الأولى وللمنطقة بأكملها.
So what he's basically saying is that the HTS operation, we have to remember that Jolani cancelled the first HTS attack, which was about 1 month prior, was effectively to derail the resistance operations against Israel and to protect the Gulf states, allowing them to normalize relations with Israel in the future. And if we want to hear the quiet agenda spoken out loud, we can always turn to Trump.
Turkey's been after that country in different names and different forms and shapes for 2,000 years. Those people that went in are from Turkey. And President Erdogan is a friend of mine. He's a guy I like, respect. I think he respects me also. He's the one that didn't go after certain people after I requested that he not. You know who I'm talking about? The Kurds. I don't know how long that's going to, because they're natural enemies. They hate each other. But he didn't do that yet, and he didn't do it in the past also. He started, and I said, please don't do that, and he didn't do it. So, but if you look at what happened with Syria, Russia was weakened, Iran was weakened, and he's a very smart guy. And he sent his people in.
Well, I don't think I need to add to that. As I say, Trump does generally say things out loud that should be kept quiet by the intelligence agencies.
Yes, thank you for that, Vanessa. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about what's next for Syria a little later in the programme. In the meantime, if you like what the UK column does, you'd like to support us, the place to go is support.ukcolumn.org. There's a link also on the front page of the main UK column website. You can support us in a number of ways. You can make a donation. You could join us as a member, and just reminder that if you do make a donation, that doesn't give you access to the extra programs and so on. So you do need to join as a member if you want to do that. There are various membership levels. You pick something up from the UK column shop. That helps us greatly. And if you do want to buy something from clivetoccarl.com, if you use the link on here, we will get a small percentage of each sale, although it won't cost you any more to do that. If you can't do any of that, that's fine as well, but please do at least share the material and help us get past the censorship regime. So on various articles around the place on the website and blog posts and videos, you'll see the share links. Please use them if you can. Now, quick advertisement for an article we published yesterday, which is the latest from Dr. Piers Robinson on the OPCW, that's the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, cover-up of the claims by the West, at least, that there was a chemical weapons attack in Douma in Syria. This has been used to justify all kinds of rhetoric about the Assad government and so on, Vanessa. But of course, the story doesn't stack up. It has never stacked up. And Piers has done a good job of highlighting that in this article.
Yeah, and it's incredibly important to highlight this story again, because, of course, what is Western media now inside Syria doing? They're rewriting the history and revising the evidence that demonstrated the MI6 CIA interference since 2011. And the major part of that were the chemical attacks. So it's very important that Piers highlights the Douma travesty right now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. And Charles, food is going to be your topic in a second, but
it is absolutely. We've long been talking about the sort of enduring and indeed encroaching crisis in food security, farming. So there's going to be an event near Exeter on Saturday, the 18th of January, next Saturday, if it's something you are interested in terms of growing your own food and indeed sourcing food locally and all that sort of thing to protect your food supply as the year goes on, then please do take a look at that. The link for that will be in the show notes. And that